He comes to our school.
Oh, does he? And what does he do at the school?
He does to us. He kills babies there.
Right.
We eat babies. We drink that.
Okay.
Because this is how we do it. So like on Wednesdays is the most special, busiest day, special day.
Okay. We'll take it little bit by little bit. So you say your dad comes to your school every day.
Yes.
What does that mean? He comes to your school every day.
So that means he comes like whenever we have school on Saturdays. He comes and sees us there.
Whereabouts does he come and see you?
My school, Christchurch Primary School.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's the area we live next to Christchurch Primary School.
Yeah.
Because we live in and then after he comes to our school.
Okay. So who drops you off at school in the morning?
My mum.
So you get dropped off at school?
Yes.
When you get dropped off at school, what do you do then?
So then they check if the coast is clear, if my mum's not there or anything around the area.
Okay.
So they go, Mr. Morris, the caretaker,
Yeah.
he goes around the school areas and checks if my mum is there or anything, like if the coast is clear.
Right.
And after they call my dad and say that everything's alright, my mum is not there, it's all clear.
How do you know that?
Because they got the number of my dad.
And how do you know that?
Because I heard them talking to my dad. That was exactly my own dad's voice. Exactly.
So where were you when you heard this caretaker speaking to you?
Staff room.
Why were you in the staff room?
Because that's where they do to me.
So you've got to school. Right,
Yes.
You've got to school. How did you get to school?
So we just go and buy a car there.
So you go back.
On December 20th, 1984, 12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her home in Greeley, Colorado in the evening hours. Earlier that day, she had sung at a Christmas concert with her school's choir, which her parents were unable to attend, as her mother was out of town and her father had gone to her sister's basketball game nearby, leading to Janelle catching a ride home with a friend. Being dropped off at her house sometime around 8:15, where she excitedly spoke to her father on the phone, letting him know that she had arrived home safe and sound. Approximately 1 hour later, her father, Jim Matthews, pulled into the driveway to find the garage door wide open, and the house completely empty. Janelle was gone, leaving behind her winter coat and even her shoes, despite it being a frigid, snowy night. And it was within that snow that was quickly piling up that lie one of the only real clues left behind at the scene. Footprints, leading directly to one of the home's windows, insinuating that someone had been watching Janelle.
12-year-old Janelle Matthews disappeared from her Greeley home 1 month ago today. It's believed she's the victim of a kidnapping. She has not been seen or heard from since December 20th.
Her disappearance became a big news story almost immediately, with the whole community and really the whole country becoming invested in the fate of this girl, thanks in large part to her being one of the very first milk carton kids, meaning that her face and information about her disappearance was shown on countless milk cartons all across the country to get the word out. And as a result, this case became huge in the mainstream media, as even politicians began to make note of Janelle's story, with then-President Ronald Reagan mentioning the girl in one of his speeches.
This Home Alone actor has pleaded guilty to a horrific crime. Devin Rattray became famous in the early 1990s as Buzz McAllister on the Home Alone films. He played Kevin's volatile and aggressive older brother on Home Alone 1 and Home Alone 2. He has now pleaded guilty on 2 counts of DV to avoid prison time. The now 47-year-old actor was accused of violence against a woman in December 2021. His girlfriend at the time reported him to police after he punched her in the face, covered her mouth with his hand, and also attempted to strangle her. She told police officers that the pair had gotten into an argument at a bar. She left to go back to their hotel room, and that is where the assault occurred. The police report says that he allegedly threatened the woman, saying, "This is how you die." He pleaded guilty to 1 count of domestic assault and battery by strangulation, and another count of domestic assault and battery. He has been ordered to do behaviour intervention plan classes and have a substance assessment. It goes without saying that he has also been banned from contacting the victim in this case.
Quite possibly one of the most infamous, heartbreaking and well-known cases in the UK is the Soham murders. The Soham murders were a double child murder that happened in England 2004. The victims were two 10-year-old girls, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. On the 4th of August 2002, the two girls would disappear after leaving their house without telling their parents where they were going. They'd gone to purchase sweets from a vending machine nearby at a local sports centre. However, they never came home and police began a huge investigation looking for the girls. On the 8th of August, a couple days later, police were able to release CCTV footage that was seen of the girls on the day they vanished. They were seen on CCTV that day at 6:28 p.m. at the sports centre. However, on the way home, they walked past the home of Ian Huntley, who was a caretaker at a senior school. Ian Huntley had a girlfriend named Maxine Carr, who was a teaching assistant at the girls' school. However, she'd just left because she was trying to get another job. And Ian Huntley had actually came forward claiming that he was one of the last people to see the girls. He said that afternoon he'd had a very brief conversation with them. They were apparently happy as Larry and asked about Maxine, whether or not she'd got this new job, which unfortunately she did not. They then said, "Tell her we're sorry," and walked away. But immediately, police became suspicious of Ian Huntley. On the 5th of August, a single officer would search Ian Huntley's home, however nothing would be found. And by the second week, Ian Huntley had become the unofficial spokesperson for the missing girls. As he was the last person to see them, he would do TV interviews, hoping that they were going to come back safe, and he's holding on to this bit of hope that the girls are going to come back safe. Maxine was also interviewed and she backed up Ian's story, saying that she was in the bath during the time of this conversation with the girls on the doorstep and she'd heard it. But on the 6th of August, Ian Huntley drove to Grimsby to pick up Maxine Carr from her parents' house. And the reason for this is because Maxine didn't hear this conversation because she wasn't at home. She was visiting her parents in Grimsby. She'd lied. And according to a witness, shortly after she'd returned home, the pair were seen at the boot of Ian Huntley's car. He had lifted up the boot to show something inside, and Maxine was seen crying. But the boot would be closed after he realised that a neighbour was approaching. What was in that boot? We have no idea. But it's kinda clear what would be in the boot as we go on. On the 16th of August, 12 days after the girls' disappearance, the pair would be questioned again for around 7 hours. Residents in Grimsby, where the pair used to live, also came forward about claims of R-word from Ian Huntley years prior. And it was also here where people realised that Maxine had not been in Soham at the time of the disappearance. She was in Grimsby. She was seen out with people. But heartbreakingly, on the 17th of August, the girls' remains would be found. They were in a horrendous state of decomposition and the cause of death could not be determined. The perpetrator had also tried to burn the two girls' bodies, and it was through DNA testing that they had to be identified. That same evening, the school where Ian Huntley worked would also be searched, and items would be recovered, such as the girls' football shirts in a burn barrel. And Ian Huntley's fingerprints would be found on this bin. Ian Huntley's car was also examined. It had been extensively cleaned, however, in the tyres, the same dust material was found in the area of where the girls were found, as well as in the arches of the pedals in his car. And the lining of the boot had been removed and replaced poorly with some sort of carpet. Now, if you'll know, that kind of corroborates before with what Maxine and Ian were looking at in the boot. Was he showing her what he'd done to the girls? And on the 17th of August, the pair were immediately arrested. During the initial questioning, Ian Huntley began acting like he was mentally ill, he needed a blanket, he needed looking after. He was so confused, he had no idea why he'd been arrested. But Maxine, on the other hand, quickly confessed to detectives that she'd lied about her alibi. It's believed that that day the girls disappeared, Ian Huntley lured the girls into his house with the promise of seeing Maxine. And it was revealed that the girls most likely died from asphyxiation. And according to Ian Huntley, he confessed that he did do it, but it was an accident. He said that the girls came to his house because one of them was having a nosebleed. So he took them upstairs, one of the girls was in the other room and the other one was in the bathroom, where the bath had already been filled with water. While he was trying to help her stop the nosebleed, he accidentally knocked her into the bath and she drowned. And the other girl, after seeing this, then freaked out and he tried to stifle her screams, which then suffocated her and killed her. and in a panic he disposed of their bodies. But obviously, the jury and everybody else knew the story was utter rubbish, and Ian Huntley was given a minimum of 40 years behind bars, which, in my opinion, he should have been given a whole life order. For her role, Maxine Carr was also sentenced to 3 years in prison for lying about her alibi and perverting the course of justice, and as you can imagine, she is long out of prison by now, but Ian Huntley still remains behind bars.
These mean girl teenagers brutally unalived a little 12-year-old girl. When Shanda Scherer was 12 years old, she moved and started attending a new school, Hazelwood Middle School. Shanda quickly made new friends and got along with everyone, except for this new girl, Amanda. Amanda was 14 years old, so 2 years older than Shanda, and she tried to start a fight with Shanda one day at school, which landed both of them in detention for a week. And instead of hating each other for that entire week they were in detention, the two girls kind of became friends in like a Breakfast Club-esque way. The two girls started spending a lot of time together, and at some point their friendship turned romantic. But there was an issue. There was somebody else in the picture. Before meeting Shanda, Amanda had an on-again, off-again girlfriend, 16-year-old Melinda Lovelace. And although their most recent breakup had literally nothing to do with Shanda, she wasn't even at that school yet, 16-year-old Melinda completely blamed 12-year-old Shanda. Melinda blamed Shanda for her and Amanda not being together. She hated her, and she was running around town saying that she wanted the 12-year-old girl dead. So while all this drama is going on with Melinda, Amanda and Shanda are trying to ignore it, just keep going with their relationship. They're still spending a lot of time together, and at some point Shanda starts to change. Her attitude starts to change, and she starts doing badly in school. Shanda's mom is completely confused about this relationship that Shanda is having with Amanda. I mean, not only was this the girl that essentially beat up her daughter and got her in detention for a week, but she also thought that Amanda was just a bad influence, and she didn't like the idea of her 12-year-old daughter being involved in this like drama with a 14 and 16-year-old. Also, at the end of the day, Shanda is only 12 years old, and her mom really didn't want her being in this serious relationship, especially with someone that was older. So Shanda's mom pulled Shanda out of Hazelwood Middle School and put her in a new school, and honestly, it worked. Shanda made new friends quickly, and her grades were back up. Amanda desperately tried to keep the relationship with Shanda going, but honestly, she really wasn't that interested anymore, so that should have been the end of it. Tragically, 16-year-old Melinda could not let her hatred of Shanda go. Melinda had this seriously twisted friend, 17-year-old Lori. Lori was seriously messed up because she really wanted to know what it would be like to unalive someone. It was literally a friendship forged in hell. You have this 17-year-old girl who wants to know what it'd be like to take someone's life, and you have a 16-year-old girl who really wanted someone dead. So they started planning. Lori even got more girls added to the plan, 15-year-old girls, Hope and Tony. Neither girl had ever even met Melinda before, and none of the girls other than Melinda had ever met Shanda. But now all four of them are involved in the plan to take the 12-year-old girl's life. It has been highly debated how much of the plan the two girls that were added by Lori at the end, Hope and Tony, actually knew. Some places report that they 100% knew that the plan was to unalive 12-year-old Shanda, while other reports say that they only thought they were going to scare her. Hope and Tony were actually the two to lure Shanda from her home shortly after midnight. They went up and they lied that they were friends of her ex-girlfriend Amanda, and Amanda really wanted to meet up with her, so they were able to lure Shanda into their car. And once Shanda was in their car, it took a seriously dark turn. For the next 8 hours, 16-year-old Melinda and 17-year-old Lori subjected 12-year-old Shanda to torture. I'm gonna briefly go over what they did to Shanda in those 8 hours. If you don't think you could handle it, just skip ahead a couple seconds. For the next 8 hours, the 16 and 17-year-old girls beat her, strangled her, stabbed her, and even SA'd her with just like random objects. For most of the attack, the other two, Hope and Tony, really did not participate in harming Shanda. They also didn't do anything to stop it either. Some people have argued that they were scared, that if Melinda and Lori would do this to Shanda, what would they do to them if they tried to stop it? But feel free to make up your own minds if you buy that defense or not. Later on in the attack, Hope did participate a little bit. As far as we know, Tony did not harm Shanda at all. She only watched, which to me is also just as disgusting almost. There were multiple times during the attack that lasted 8 hours. They thought that Shanda had passed away, but she was such a fighter and she survived all of it. So sometime after sunrise, the 4 teenage girls burned 12-year-old Shanda alive. Her last word was mommy. Shanda's body was found only hours later, and that same day, Tony confessed everything to the police, and all 4 girls were arrested. All 4 girls were tried as adults but pled guilty as part of a plea deal. All of the girls blamed their actions on their bad childhoods, which pisses me off so much because I'm sure like a lot of you guys are watching this video. I did not have the ideal childhood, but I did not take that out on an innocent 12-year-old. And I'm sure you guys are already all super pissed off and disgusted by the details of this case, but I'm gonna make you guys so much angrier. Tony, the one who participated the least and actually confessed, was sentenced to 20 years and only served 9 of them before being released. Hope was sentenced to 60 years in prison, appealed that and was given 35 years in prison, but released after serving only 14. Lori, the one that wanted to unalive someone and see what it was like, was sentenced to 60 years in prison, but released after serving less than 26. And Melinda Loveless, the ringleader in this entire plot, was sentenced to 60 years in prison, but released after serving 27 years. So today, all 4 girls are out in society, completely free, after serving less than half of their sentences. Which is so disgusting and a complete slap in the face, and I do not understand how this happened. Personally, I do not think anyone should be released early for good behavior after unaliving someone, but that is just my opinion. You can let me know what you think in the comments. If you did watch the end of this video, thank you so much for listening to Shanda Sharer's story. I know that this was a really hard one to get through. If you are seeing this though, please leave something sweet, nice, and supportive in the comments, because there is a chance that someone that did know Shanda is watching this video now. I love you guys so much. You guys are truly the best audience ever. Drop your case suggestions in the comments and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
This church pastor killed one of his 2 wives right after she gave birth to his baby.
Whenever someone is backstabbing me, lying about me, gossiping about me, trying to tear me down or whatever, you know what I want to do? My feelings say, choke the life out of them.
Marie Carlson was born in the Philippines but was raised by her father in America. Marie had big dreams of working for the FBI one day, and while she was studying criminal justice, she met Jeff Carlson and they started dating. They got married together. They had a daughter they named Paris that they were absolutely in love with. But sadly, like so many other people, Marie really struggled with her mental health. This was something that really affected Marie on and off throughout her entire life. And in adulthood, after she gave birth to her daughter Paris, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Eventually, Marie and her husband decided to get a divorce, but they did end things on good terms for their daughter's sake. And after a lot of back and forth mentally, Marie agreed that primary custody of her daughter should go to her ex-husband. This was a very difficult decision. She did not think that she was in a very stable place in life, and she thought that she should do what's best for her daughter versus what she wanted more. Marie moved to Florida and she started working at a coffee shop that was inside of a church, the Calvary Emerald Coast Church, that was run by its pastor, James Flanders. James Flanders was a very well-loved pastor. He was very charismatic and he had a more like casual way of doing his preachings. James's wife Tanya was also really involved in the church, and they were just seen as like this like happy power golden couple in their church. And Marie quickly became very close with the Flanders. They helped her out a lot at first by paying her bills, but by October of 2009, Marie was living with them. And by 2010, Marie was pregnant. Now, Marie, James, and Tanya told very different stories about how Marie came to be pregnant. One was that Marie became pregnant by an abusive ex-boyfriend. She did not want to keep the baby, so James and Tanya were planning on adopting Marie's baby. Another was that Marie agreed to be a surrogate for James and Tanya, but Tanya actually told some of her closest friends that Marie was their surrogate, but they couldn't afford to do the more traditional way of surrogacy. So James and Marie conceived this baby the old-fashioned way. But every single story they told ended the same way, that Marie was planning on giving her baby to James and Tanya after she was born. They even threw Maria/Tanya a baby shower. There's this photo of Marie, who's very pregnant, next to Tanya, and she has like a pillow under her shirt to pose for this like cute photo together. So they all seem really happy. Everything seemed like it was really good. But shortly after Marie gave birth to a little girl named Grace, Marie disappeared. She sent out a text to all of her friends and family on October 19th, 2011 that read that she was leaving Florida and there was something that she always wanted to do that she was going to do, but the text was very vague and it didn't say what she was doing or where she was going. And everyone that like really knew Marie got a really bad feeling after getting this text. It didn't sound like her. Like, she wasn't the type to just get up and leave, especially without telling her first daughter, Paris, where she would be going. And also, like, the words that were in the text just did not sound like Marie. There was just a gut feeling felt by all of Marie's loved ones that she wasn't actually the one that sent this text. So 5 days later, she was reported missing. And the police actually took Marie's disappearance very seriously right away, which is something that I feel like I never ever get to say in these cases. And investigators were really interested in learning more about and speaking with James and Tanya Flanders. They were the last to see Marie. She lived with them, and they were also raising Marie's newborn daughter. James told the investigators that they were helping Marie out, like they were paying her bills and also letting her live with them. And in exchange, Marie wanted to help them start a family and have a baby. So she agreed to be their surrogate, but like IVF, the more traditional route, was way too expensive. So James and Marie conceived this baby by sleeping together. And of course, this had to be a secret because James was a pastor and it didn't look good if he was sleeping with someone that wasn't his wife, Tanya. But he also did say that Tanya knew about this, was completely okay with this, and she was actually in the room while Marie and James conceived this baby. It really sounds like the Handmaid's Tale. But when Tanya was questioned, she actually let it slip, a really big secret that no one knew. Marie wasn't actually their surrogate. She was her sister wife. They were in like a throuple polygamous style marriage where James got Tanya and James also got Marie. This is how Marie and James actually conceived this baby, but Marie wasn't ready to have another child, so she agreed to let James and Tanya raise her baby. And this was something that Marie was happy to do, according to Tanya, but of course it had to be a big secret because James was a pastor. But then investigators started hearing whispers, rumors throughout their church. One witness overheard Marie saying that she wanted the baby and James all to herself without Tanya. So a theory and possible motive began to emerge that Marie and James got pregnant. Marie agreed to give over her daughter Grace once the baby was born, but then when the baby was born, Marie changed her mind and James and Tanya killed her to keep custody of the baby. Cell phone records proved that James and Marie's cell phones were together for days after James said he last saw Marie. Detectives reached out to James and Tanya again, said that they wanted to speak with them, but after hearing this, James and Tanya actually packed up their house and fled in the middle of the night and moved away from Florida all the way across the entire country to Arizona. And after they left Florida, more members of their church started coming out saying some really crazy stuff. Like James was telling them that he had to leave the country because of something really bad. James also allegedly sat down all the other high-ranking members of his church and told them that he was in a polygamous marriage with Tanya and Marie. He resigned as a pastor that day, and just a few days later, they packed up and moved to Arizona. James and Tanya certainly looked Very, very suspicious, but there wasn't actually any physical evidence or even a body to make an arrest for murder. And then 6 months after Marie disappeared, an anonymous tip came through saying that James killed Marie and then buried her body in their backyard. Officers went and did a huge search of the Flanders' old backyard. They brought a bunch of cadaver dogs. They had like that ground penetrating sonar. They searched for hours, but they did not find Marie's body. Sadly, years and years would go by without any answers. And then on May 5th, 2015, they finally arrested James for second-degree murder. They were still nervous that they did not have enough evidence to actually get a conviction. So with the blessing from Marie's family, they offered James a plea deal. If he told them where they could find Marie's body, that he would get a reduced sentence. And then in April of 2016, almost 5 years after Marie first went missing, James accepted this plea deal and he pled guilty to manslaughter, which holds a maximum sentence of only 15 years in prison. And that's when they discovered that Marie really was in the backyard the entire time. This is James's story of events on how Marie died. Whether or not you believe it, let me know in the comments. I actually do not believe this story at all. He said on October 17th, him and Marie were having an argument and Marie got really, really violent with him. So to like stop her from attacking him, he kind of like bear hugged her. He wrapped his arms around her and then they accidentally fell down. And it was like the effects of being like bear hugged and falling that killed Marie. James then dug a hole in his backyard and buried her body. But he actually dug the hole so deep that the cadaver dogs and the sonar could not find her. And this is just so heartbreaking because it took over 5 years to find her body. And they got that tip only 6 months after she disappeared. And they did search the backyard. They actually did, but they didn't find her. And if they had found her, then they would have never had to offer James a plea deal. If they would have found her in that initial search 6 months after she disappeared, then he could have gone away for life. But instead, he will be released after serving 15 years. He could be released as early as 2029, which is only 3 years away. And if you're wondering about James's wife, Tanya, there was never enough evidence to prove that she had any involvement or knowledge about Marie's murder, even though let me know your thoughts about that. And Tanya is actually still raising Marie and James's daughter, Grace. There's so many thoughts and feelings about this case. It's so absolutely frustrating. On one hand, I'm really happy that Marie's loved ones, her daughter, have answers and have closure and we're able to put her to rest. But it's so hard knowing that she was there. They were probably like inches away from her. They could have found her and they didn't. And because of that, now this man could be released from prison in only 3 years and his wife is raising Marie's baby. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions in the comments. But while you're there, please remember that this is Marie's story. You have no idea who could be in the comment section. Marie's daughter, Marie's loved ones, her friends could be in the comment section. You have no idea who could ever be reading your comments. So please always remember to be respectful. While you're in the comments, please also let me know what case you want to see me cover next. Thank you to everyone that reached out and suggested this case. And I will see you guys all next time in my next video. Please, please, please be a good person to your fellow person.
He ran into the woods screaming that bad guys were after him and going to kill him after seeing 3 of them in black ski masks standing outside of his home. He disappeared after this, and it's now been 22 years with no answers as to what happened that night. This is the mysterious disappearance of Jeremy Alex. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. People don't just vanish into thin air. But he seemingly did, so let's talk about it. This is Jeremy Alex. He was 28 years old when he suddenly and very mysteriously disappeared in 2004. Growing up, Jeremy and his sister lived in Belfast, Maine with their mom. Their parents divorced when they were little, but this didn't stop them from being incredibly loved. Jeremy was known to be a free spirit. He loved to snowboard, read, and skateboard. Pretty much anything having to do with nature, he loved it. He was also a very funny and social person, and he had so many friends that they kind of ran their little neighborhood. Fast forward into adulthood. Jeremy loved loved two things: to travel and the rock band The Grateful Dead. So being a free spirit, he bought a van so that he and a couple of his friends could follow the band while they were on tour. Even if he traveled super far away, he always checked in with his family to let them know that he was okay and how much fun he was having. During this time on the road though, Jeremy started experimenting with drugs like weed and LSD, and eventually some other harder things. This is when he met a girl named Susie, and they really hit it off and soon began dating. Not long after, they moved back home to Maine to be closer with Jeremy's family. Now, Susie knew about his occasional drug use, as did his parents, and nobody was happy about it, but everyone thought he had it under control. But after moving back home, every 6 months or so he would go on a bender, which really upset Susie, but she just didn't know how to help. No one did. In early 2004, Jeremy celebrated his 28th birthday with those who loved him most, and this was kind of like a crossroad for him. He was about to move into a new rental home in Northport with Susie, and he was just beginning his life, really. But on April 22nd, his personality would shift. He and Susie, as well as a few of their friends, spent the day up at Sugarloaf Mountain having some outdoor fun. Things were going great until they got back. This is when Jeremy's mood shifted, and it kind of seemed like he wanted to part ways with Susie, which was completely out of the blue. He told her that he wanted to keep moving things into their new house, but alone. And although this hurt Susie's feelings, she figured that he probably just wanted to party without her there and disapproving of it all. There was already some tension in their relationship because of his drug use, but this made it a lot worse. So Susie stayed behind at their old apartment, and Jeremy never came home that night. One of his friends later said that she was with Jeremy that night, and it was his first night of a multi-day drug bender. This friend said that he used some pretty hard drugs, which made her realize that he was a bit out of control. This brings us to Friday, April 23rd, 2004. This was Jeremy's first night in his brand new house in Northport, and he was alone as Susie was still at their old apartment. Late that night, Jeremy saw something that really scared him. He said he saw Susie and two other people standing outside and wearing black ski masks, just glaring at him through his window. He brushed it off and went to bed, but this freaked him out really bad. The next morning, now April 24th, Jeremy went to his old apartment and confronted Susie about the incident. At this point, he was in full-blown panic mode and super agitated. He told Susie that people were out to get him and kill him, and that she was a part of this huge conspiracy. This obviously freaked Susie out because she had no idea what he was talking about, as she wasn't outside his window that night, and because Jeremy was so paranoid that he seemed dangerous. So she locked herself in the upstairs bathroom and started crying. A few minutes later, Jeremy comes up and seems completely normal, even apologizing and worried that he scared her. But when she opens the door, it's like his personality switched again and he became even more agitated. Jeremy then packed up some furniture in his van and said he had to quickly go because he had an appointment that afternoon to buy a moped, which was also random. He then stormed out the front door, and this would be the very last time that Susie would ever see him again. The very last time that Jeremy would ever be seen alive was at 6 that evening. A woman named Cynthia was out on her back porch in Northport, Maine, when all of a sudden a man ran out of the woods behind her home and into her yard. She said he seemed really panicked, unkempt, and very scared, like he was delusional. The man had a red backpack slung over his shoulder and a big wad of money gripped tightly in his hand, but upon looking closer, this wasn't just any random man. She actually recognized him as one of her former students, none other than Jeremy Alex. She was his English teacher more than a decade prior, but she did recognize him. Jeremy was super paranoid, and he told Cynthia that some bad guys were trying to hurt him, and she said it was weird because one second he seemed to recognize her too, but the next it was like he had no clue who she was. Jeremy begged her not to call the cops, but with all the commotion, her husband came outside and tried to calm Jeremy down. He told him to come sit in their backyard and just talk to them and tell them what was going on, so he did. While this was happening, Cynthia tried to sneak inside to call an ambulance, which spooked Jeremy, so he tried to take off running, but her husband pinned him down. And just as the ambulance was pulling up into their driveway, Jeremy somehow broke free, where he then ran back into the woods, never to be seen again. So because of all of this, the police were called, and it didn't take them long to find Jeremy's van, which was in a parking lot at the end of the road, abandoned. Inside were his keys and some of his personal belongings, like his cell phone. This led to a smallish search in the surrounding area, but no trace of Jeremy was found. At first, authorities thought that this was maybe just a situation where he ran off and just needed some time to himself since he was an adult, but it soon became clear that was not the case. By the next day, Jeremy had still not returned for his van, so this is when police grabbed his phone and started calling all of his contacts, but nobody had seen or heard from him since the day prior. By Monday morning, police notified Jeremy's family and filled them in on his bizarre behavior and now his disappearance. Again, at first they tried not to worry and figured there must be some good explanation for this, but then they called Susie, his girlfriend, and they quickly learned of Jeremy's Jeremy's last moments and how something was really not right here. One of the first things Susie could think of doing was go to their new rental home, and there she found the door wide open and unlocked with the key still inside the deadbolt. Inside, she found some drugs, and now with the police being involved, she was worried that Jeremy would get into even more trouble, so she flushed them. This kickstarted a massive search for Jeremy, which included several different law enforcement agencies, tracking dogs, and volunteers. Together, they combed every possible area that Jeremy could be. All the back roads, the woods surrounding his former teacher's home, vacant camps nearby, and even Penobscot Bay, which was a mile east of where his van was found. If you ran through the woods, you would find that it sloped pretty steep down into the bay, so police used ultralight aircraft to search that as well. But absolutely no trace of Jeremy was found. It was like he vanished into thin air. Time was definitely not on their side, as he had now been missing for 3 days, and the weather was now freezing. It also concerned everyone the way Jeremy was behaving, and it made a lot of people question if he was hallucinating because of the drugs that he took. On May 6th, the search for Jeremy was officially called off. I mean, everything you could possibly search was searched, and they found nothing. So this led police to believe that he just wasn't in this area anymore. But this is where the story gets even more bizarre, because 1 month after Jeremy disappeared, something was found, but it would go unnoticed and unreported for another 4 years. So in May 2004, a couple who had just purchased a beautiful coastal home in Northport were walking across the shore of Penobscot Bay. It was perfect, and they'd often find a ton of different things that had washed ashore, like feathers, sea glass, and even money sometimes. But that day, they found something else. On the shore lay a driver's license, face down. When they flipped it over, they found that the license belonged to Jeremy Alex, but at the time, they had no idea that he was a missing person. This couple would then put all of their cool collections into a vase sitting on their coffee table, and that's exactly where they put Jeremy's driver's license. It then sat there for another 4 years, untouched. Then one day out of the blue in 2008, they invited their friend Jim over. Jim was a retired California patrol officer, and that day the couple was telling him all of the cool stuff they had found over the years, including a driver's license. This kind of stuck out to Jim, so he asked to see it, and when he did, he immediately recognized Jeremy Alex as the man who went missing years prior. So he reported this to the Maine State Police and even contacted Jeremy's dad to let him know what was found. So from that point on, Jeremy's family began making the drive every single weekend to search the shore of Penobscot Bay for any other potential clues. But this turned up nothing else, which sadly is probably because so many years had passed at that point. His family believes that Jeremy is likely dead at this point, and although we don't know what exactly happened to him, there are a few theories. Theory number 1 is that Jeremy accidentally died after suffering from a bad drug trip. Some speculate that he got lost in the woods surrounding his former teacher's home and died of hypothermia and the elements, and that he just hasn't been found yet. Some think that as he was running deeper into the woods from the bad guys that he thought were after him, that he slipped and fell into Penobscot Bay and just accidentally drowned. That this was all the result of some hallucinations, or that he was in a delusional state and just accidentally died. Theory number 2 is a bit darker, and it's that Jeremy was met with foul play. His parents and so many others think that he was killed for his drug use, possibly by drug dealers, and that he was then thrown in the water, or at the very least, all of his belongings were. According to Murder, She Wrote, who did an interview with Jeremy's sister, there are some wild rumors in town about what could have happened to him. One is that the Waldo County Sheriff's Office and Belfast Police covered up his death, and I guess if you search far enough, you can find some names of the people who are likely responsible, maybe even former friends of Jeremy's. It's rumored that they even have ties to the police force. There's also reportedly a map out there of dead bodies buried in someone's backyard, and that it could be tied to Jeremy's location. There are also some people on Reddit, so take that information as you will, but they say Jeremy was killed. They also say that there were known to be 3 people running around Belfast in black ski masks trying to scare the community, which makes me question if Jeremy really saw someone that day standing outside of his house like he said he did. It's just another layer of confusion surrounding this case. Then there are people who have allegedly confessed. But again, these are all rumors and just speculation, as no one has ever been charged in connection to his disappearance. One thing about this case and many others that I've covered is that I've noticed if someone has had struggles in their life, like with drug use, their case doesn't get attention. And if it does, that's what people focus on. I know it's a part of the story and should be included for obvious reasons, but it shouldn't be the main focus. Just because Jeremy struggled with addiction doesn't mean that he wasn't loved, because he was. very much, and he still deserves to be found and brought home to his family. Regardless of what happened to him that day, this case is still unsolved. If you have any information about the disappearance of Jeremy Alex, make sure to contact this tip line. But it's now been 22 years, and whatever happened to Jeremy that day in the woods remains a mystery.
How has no one heard of the Australian version of the Chris Watts case? It was November 2003. 41-year-old Anna Kemp had some amazing news. She was pregnant. She was so excited. She already had a little girl called Gracie and was so excited to finally complete her own little family. She was a great mum, so she was really pleased to tell her husband John that they were expecting. The pair had got married in 1994 and things hadn't always been easy. Little Gracie was born with a condition called hip dysplasia, which caused her a lot of pain. Because of this, she sometimes struggled to sleep, and therefore so did her mum and dad. They were pretty tired a lot of the time, and Anna actually found it really difficult to cope. Her and Gracie were admitted to hospital several times for some respite. In 2004, with a new baby on the horizon, the family moved to a new house. This was beautiful 116 Prince Street in Mornington. Anna was really looking forward to being in the new family home, not knowing that it would soon become a murder scene. On the 22nd of March that year, at around midday, Anna collected Gracie from childcare as normal. Later that evening, Anna chatted on the phone to one of her friends in New Zealand and was reportedly completely fine. Anna had made plans later that week to see her friend Samantha. Samantha was alarmed though when she got a call off John, who she never spoke to. John told her something shocking. Anna had left him. Not only that, but she'd also left her daughter Gracie behind. Now this was completely out of character and Samantha knew it. There was no way her friend, who was by now 8 months pregnant, who had just moved into a lovely new family home, would not only leave her husband but her little daughter behind. John actually then began ringing around other people that they knew to tell them the same story. And this time he added some details. He'd been dumped for another man, and this man was the father to the unborn child. Anna's friends and family began trying to call her to see what on earth was going on, but to no avail. She was nowhere to be seen. Then on Wednesday that week, a workman showed up to the family home. Now this was something that Anna had scheduled in, and I don't know if John was aware of it. Now, John was weirdly cagey and didn't let the workman inside. John then told Anna's family and friends that Anna had actually turned up to the house in a taxi, taken Gracie with her, and then just shot off somewhere. Now, by this point, police were informed, so they contacted every single taxi service in the local area, and absolutely none of them had any record of ever having picked Anna up or taking her anywhere. Police then interviewed John. He told them what he'd told the others, but the police decided to start monitoring him quite closely. Then, in April that year, one of Anna's family members had a very strange email. This was supposedly off Anna, but it didn't really sound like Anna, and she said she just needed some time and space. Obviously, all the while, police were watching John. They then observed him doing something very disturbing. He was seen hanging around by bushes by some public toilets, picking up a plastic bag, removing what looked to be some sort of bank card, and then putting the bag back in the bush. Obviously, police went straight there to see what on earth was in this bag. What they found was chilling. It was Anna's phone. Now, John wasn't hiding from the media, though, throughout all of this. He was doing televised appeals. This was very similar to how Chris Watts behaved kind of bizarrely in his own TV appeal. John was wiping suspiciously dry eyes, stated, "The marriage may be over, but I still love you." He denied to reporters doing anything to harm his wife or daughter. Now, by this point, months had gone by, and we're in June. This was now a homicide investigation. Police had enough information to believe that actually Anna had been killed. They did hold on hope, though, to little Gracie being found alive. Now, the top suspect was obviously John, with how weirdly he's been acting throughout the whole investigation. On the 10th of June, he was re-interviewed. Now, he was really lacking in any emotion in this interview, very different to how he appeared on the TV when he was holding his head and looking all distressed. After he was arrested for murder, he finally confessed. And the truth was absolutely horrifying. Around 6 weeks prior to Anna and Gracie's disappearance, John bought a spear gun with cash so it couldn't be traced. John admitted that he and Anna had got into an argument one evening and Anna had gone off to sleep. He went to the garage, grabbed a spear gun, and while she slept, he fired it into her head. Horrifically though, she was still breathing, so he fired again, killing her. Little Gracie was asleep in the house in her cot. The next day, John had just simply taken Gracie to childcare as normal. All this was going on while Anna's body lay dead in her bed. Now, she was dead inside the house when the workmen showed up, which explained why John was acting so suspiciously. He then dug a shallow grave in the garden and buried his wife. Later on, after putting Gracie to bed, he would yet again go and retrieve his spear gun. After drinking several glasses of whiskey, he killed her. Horrifically, again, this did not kill her outright, and he had to shoot her 4 times with the spear gun. He disposed of her and the spears in an industrial bin. Shortly after, he drove to a hardware store and bought a chainsaw. He dug his wife back up and dismembered her, and he then dumped various parts of her body in different waste collection sites. He told officers all of this, showing absolutely no emotion. Now, dedicated search teams finally found Gracie and Anna's remains in landfill after an agonizing search. They desperately wanted to give them the send-off that they deserved, along with Anna's unborn son. John pleaded guilty to the murders and got 2 life terms. He's kept in protective custody due to threats from other prisoners.